I matched with my wife under a fake name. She chose me. I didn't mean to make a profile. That's what I told myself the first night the apartment felt too quiet, when Nora said she was staying late workshopping a pitch, and the clock rolled past the hour where ambition looks less like drive and more like a locked door. I opened the app because I wanted to see, not to do. That's a lousy distinction, like saying you went to the bar for the lighting, but it's what I had. The app was called Common Thread, all lowercase and self-righteous. It sold itself as a place for conversations, which is what people say when they're embarrassed to call it what it is. The interface was clean and coy. It coughed up strangers in soft gradients, faces half-turned, a corner of a smile. I scrolled and felt like a tourist who insists he isn't lost. Then I saw her. It was Nora. Not her face head-on, not the usual effortless poise she used for friends' photos. A profile shot in a yellow scarf I'd bought in Lisbon, teeth worrying the edge like she was mid-thought. Her bio was 3 lines. Here for coffee, not chaos. Talks too much about film scores. Preferred doorways to stages. We'd been married 7 years. She had never said she preferred doorways, but she lives there, half in, half out, always one shoulder leaning somewhere you want to follow. I stared at the screen until the words went fuzzy. The app said her name was Lore. The proximity circle glowed like a dare. I put the phone down on the table and paced into the kitchen where her basil plant had finally surrendered to the radiators, each leaf crumpled like a small apology. It could have been old, a joke, a profile that meant nothing, like a sweater forgotten at an ex's place that still smelled like you if you wanted it to. I could ask her straight out and watch her build a sentence while I counted the places it bent. Or I could do the thing I'm not proud of but can't deny. I could make a profile and see if the algorithm decided our marriage was a match. I typed a fake name, Miles, and chose a photo where I'm mostly a jawline and a collar. I gave myself the bio of a man who reads on trains but not too loudly. I moved the age slider 2 years in the direction that made me interesting without lying. When the app asked what I was looking for, I didn't select coffee or chaos. I left the line blank. It felt honest. I found her again, the scarf aflare. I hovered over the button that said speak, because Common Thread didn't let you match, only start, and thought about the night Nora and I met, at a party where everyone wore their cleverness like name tags. She made a joke about a song that had been popular in high school and then apologized for the irony. I said I liked sincerity. That's brave, she said, and then she said my actual name like it might be a place worth visiting. I pressed speak. The app asked for an opener. I typed favorite film score, I'll go first. Thomas Newman makes me miss rooms I've never been in. It was the kind of line I would have sent her when we were new. It rested somewhere between the truth and the attention you give when you want to be chosen. She answered 10 minutes later. I watched the chat bubble appear like a heartbeat, then disappear, then return with a sentence already flavored like her. Alexander Desplat on a gray morning, but Clint Mansell when I want trouble. I sat down hard. I could almost hear her saying it, the little upturn on trouble. The apartment looked different. The couch the color of storms, the ceramic bowl on our table with an intentional chip we called character. Everything felt like a stage set we'd both stepped off. I had options. I could end it there, delete Miles and pretend I'd never trespassed. Or I could give myself one conversation, the kind of talk we used to have at midnight with our feet touching under a bar table, the jukebox choosing songs that made us feel like conspirators. I wrote, "What kind of trouble?" Her reply came without hesitation, the kind you can walk away from and pretend you didn't. There in that sentence was my wife, earnest enough to want to play fair, feral enough to ask the game to matter. I told myself I was protecting us by giving her a safe place to confess. The simpler truth is I wanted to be chosen by her again, even if she didn't know it was me. We talked for a week, not constantly. In the spaces where our house was quiet and the city's noise feathered the windows, we talked about the brittle fatigue of being good at your job for a long time, about dinner parties where you can feel the invisible spreadsheet tallying who brought what and how well they disguised their ambition. She told me about a recurring dream where she's walking through a hotel where every room is some version of our life. In some of them, we have a child. In some, we've moved to a new city. In one, the plants are alive and the coffee is perfect, and we never leave the kitchen. I told her Miles liked doorways better than stages, too. She typed, "I knew you would." 2 nights later, Common Thread sent what it calls a threaded invite, a suggestion for a place and time based on your chats. The app offered the Orpheum, a restored theater lobby turned bar where the cocktails come in glasses that make your hand look like a photograph. The time was Saturday, just vague enough to let you pretend you hadn't been waiting for it. She sent, "Would you meet me there? For coffee disguised as gin. Just to talk, I don't do chaos." I stared so long my eyes ached. Every movie where someone gets caught started with a sentence like that. But I wasn't trying to trap her. I wanted to know who she was when she wasn't trying to be the person she'd worked so hard to become. Yes, I wrote, doorways, not stages. Saturday came with weather you could taste. The air was damp, and the sky had that low, bruised look I've always liked because it makes light feel like a choice. I told Nora I needed to pick up tailoring from a shop downtown. She kissed my cheek in the doorway, distracted, already half in a text thread with coworkers. She wore a sweater that makes her neck look like a line from a song. The Orpheum was all brass and old stories. I chose a table halfway between the bar and the exit because I wanted to be both brave and able to run. I ordered something iced and moral. I waited. When she walked in, the room adjusted. She hadn't worn the yellow scarf. Her hair was up in a way that always looks like she's just decided to want something. She wore the same kind of light makeup she always does, the kind that announces nothing but amplifies everything. She hesitated in the vacuum between the door and the bar, then saw me and smiled in that careful way you give to strangers you intend to trust. "Miles," she said, and I almost answered out loud with our mortgage rate and the way she takes her tea. Instead, I stood, nodded, and offered my hand because it seemed like the safest thing to do with it. Her fingers were cool, purposeful. We sat. The bartender did the thing where he pretends witnesses are invisible. "Hello," she said, and it was both greeting and thesis. "Hello," I said. The first 5 minutes were the sort of play acting the app set you up for. Where did you grow up? What do you do that you pretend isn't a job? How do you feel about Sundays? She didn't lie. She described the broad outline of our life the way someone might frame a house before deciding where to put the windows. I kept my voice lower than usual so she'd lean in. She did, and the scent of her shampoo reached me like a rumor I wanted to believe. "You look different than your photo," she said finally, tilting her head. "Your jawline is less aggressive." "I've been trying to be kinder," I said, and she laughed, low, surprised. The laugh hit me like memory. The second time we slept together, when we couldn't stop smiling into each other's mouths because it felt like having a secret handshake with the universe. I took a breath and put that memory back where it wouldn't embarrass me. We talked about music. We talked about the quiet kind of jealousy, the kind that wakes you at 3 a.m. and makes you tally all the WhatsApp threads you're not in. We talked about a version of love that feels like matchmaking between your private loneliness and somebody else's patience. We didn't touch, not really. We let proximity do its science. She toyed with her glass. I kept looking at the pulse in her throat like it might be sending me a message. "I'm married," she said, halfway through what was either our first drink or our last. "You should know, he's not a villain. He is sometimes a wall I know by heart." I nodded because that is a thing she has the right to say. "I'm not here to kick walls," I said. "I'm here because I like the way you wrote about doorways." She turned the stemware slowly between her fingers. "I thought if I talked to someone in a lobby, I could remember what it felt like to be an entrance instead of an endpoint." "What if you're both?" I asked. "Then I should stop flirting with people whose jaws are kinder than their photos," she said, smiling with her mouth closed, as if to keep the good words in. We left it there. We paid like upstanding citizens and stepped out under a sky that had decided to cry without spectacle. The rain came gentle and uncommitted. We stood under the awning with 2 feet of space between us that suggested anything could happen and nothing should. "I'm going home," she said after a moment. "To my husband. I'm going to tell him I almost did something very easy and very stupid." "Tell him you did something brave instead," I said. "You opened a door and then you closed it." She looked at me, then in a way that felt like a hand on my face. "I hope he looks at me like that," she said. "He does," I said, because this was the precipice where pretending had to give way. My throat went tight. My hands did their nervous theater in my pockets. I could have ended the performance there. I could have watched her walk toward our home and stayed miles in the app forever, a ghost she kept in the part of her brain that smells like rain. But the distance between honesty and cruelty is a thin wire. I didn't want to live on it. "Nora," I said softly, so softly the rain almost took it. She stilled. The name hung between us like a key I shouldn't have thrown. She turned slowly, eyes widening, not in horror, not exactly. More like the moment in a thriller where the reveal makes sense of every sinking feeling, and you're almost grateful to be right. "Jamie," she said, and my own name in her mouth doubled me. We stood there, two people who had dated each other twice, choosing each other with more information this time. Her hand flew to her lips. She laughed, one incredulous burst, then went very still. "You," she started. I wanted to know who you were when you weren't sure I was looking," I said. "Which is a bad reason that hid a good one. I wanted to be chosen by you again." Her mouth opened, closed. She stepped forward that last forbidden 2 feet and put her palm flat on my chest, right over the part that does the counting. The contact wasn't dramatic. It was the voltage of recognition. The street hummed. The awning dripped steadily, a metronome for a scene I didn't know how to score. "You made a profile," she said, half accusation, half wonder. "You chose my scarf in Lisbon. You knew about Desplat. Of course you did." Her eyes went bright and then brighter, not with tears exactly, but with a shine that made the streetlights do their cinema. "I'm sorry," I said, "and I'm not sorry I met you here." She took a breath that rearranged my future. "Take me home," she said, "and tell me on the way exactly why you did this, and exactly what you thought you were going to do if I kissed you in there." "I would have gone home and kissed you instead," I said, because the rain and the awning and the theater marquee had conspired to make me brave. We walked the 10 blocks like we used to, shoulder to shoulder, sharing a small umbrella that forced the kind of closeness that recalibrates your posture. She slipped her hand into the crook of my arm. My body, the traitor and the witness, recognized the move and adjusted, lifting my elbow to invite her in. "I made the profile because I got a notification that you were following a playlist called Morning Lobbies," I said. It felt like an invitation written to somewhere that wasn't our living room. She smiled sideways. It's just piano tracks and rain sounds." "Exactly," I said. "My jealousy is very literal." She bumped me with her hip. "You looked good in there," she said, quieter around the eyes. "I wanted to lean forward and tell you something I don't remember telling you lately." "What?" "That I like you," she said. "Not just the husband you are. The man who says brave things about sincerity and buys yellow scarves and knows when to leave parties. I like you." We crossed under a tree that shook water onto us like a dog. We ran the last half block, laughing like accomplices. In our building's lobby, she pulled me to a stop and rose on her toes, kissing me the way you do when you don't want to make a spectacle but absolutely need the headline. It wasn't showy. It was firm and certain and a little hungry, a promise without a time stamp. If there were cameras, they got a PG version. Inside my chest, the rating was different. Upstairs, the apartment looked like it always does at that hour. Lamps like small moons. The couch waiting to host whatever story we decided to tell. We stood in the doorway because of course we did. She put her hands on my shoulders and let her forehead rest against mine like a door swinging into its frame. "Delete Miles with me," she said. "Delete Lore with me," I said. We sat at the table with our phones, like two teenagers doing a group project. We erased the profiles with a kind of ceremonial efficiency that made me love her more. It felt less like scrubbing evidence and more like sweeping a floor before you dance in a room you've just repainted. When it was done, we both exhaled and laughed at ourselves because it's healthy to find yourself ridiculous right after you've been dramatic. "Tell me something you didn't say in the chat," she said, leaning back, eyes doing that amused glimmer that always undoes me. "I wish I'd taken more pictures of you in that scarf," I said. "And I wish I'd told you last week that your presentation made me want to follow you into any room, even if it was full of managers with opinions about fonts." She reached across the table. "Tell me something you didn't say to me in the bar." "I wanted to put my hand on the small of your back when you stood," I said. "And then I wanted to stop wanting it because it felt like stealing." "Steal it now," she said, soft, a dare I was allowed to accept. We took the long way to the bedroom, which is to say we paused in the hallway under that framed print of Lisbon and let our mouths find a pace that felt like learning but not rushing. We didn't undress each other like a movie. We set hands to shoulders and waist and the line of an arm, and let our bodies remember what they'd known before we got so fluent at schedules. It was all suggestion and promise and heat without spectacle. If the neighbors heard anything, it was laughter and the sound of a door closing on a story that had tried very hard to get written without us. Later, in the quiet, we lay the wrong way on the bed with our feet at the headboard because it felt like breaking a small rule together. She traced a line down my forearm and said, "Thank you for being a kind jawline." "Thank you for choosing me," I said. "I always do," she said. And then, like someone remembering a good line from a film, she added, "Doorways, not stages." We slept with the window open and the rain doing its unspectacular work. In the morning, the apartment smelled like coffee and the sweeter basil leaves that had decided, stubbornly, to live. Nora played a piano track from a playlist she renamed Home Lobbies. We danced in the kitchen in the way that doesn't show your neighbors anything except the shape of two people who haven't forgotten how to meet each other in a doorway and step through. When she left for work, she stopped in the threshold and looked back the way she always does, that last check to make sure we're still in the same scene. "Text me something as if you were him," she said, smiling, testing. I wrote favorite film score today. She answered from the elevator, the one playing in our kitchen. I put my phone down and let the room hold the echo. It wasn't chaos. It was coffee, it was rain, It was a door I'd walked through twice to find the same person waiting on the other side, with her hair up, her sleeves rolled, ready to be chosen like a decision, over and over with eyes open.